Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambam Kareshyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahe Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste and welcome to today's session. At the end of the last session, can you hear me? Because I'm a bit further from the mic today than previously.
No, clear, Ravi.
As clear as ever.
Okay, thank you. At the end of the last session, I spoke about Aham and Idam. How I or Aham is different from what I perceive, which is Idam. The point is that the objects of perception, things that I perceive, and by perceive I mean the entire range of objects which are objectified by the five sense organs. All these objects are objects of my perception, and they come under the category of Idam or this. And Idam is different from Aham, which is I. And this is commonly known, that things that I perceive are different from me. I don't say a thing that I perceive is me. For example, if I perceive a car, I don't say the car is me. The car is either somebody else's or it's my car. So that is the first logic that was established at the end of the last session. The second one was Aham and Mama. Where Mama means mine. And the logic of that was that what I possess is different from me. In other words, what belongs to me is not me. The house I live belongs to me. It's my house. The title deed clearly reflects it as my house. But I am not the house. Even the shirt I wear, while it's intrinsically a part of, I'm wearing it on my body, I will say this is my shirt. The shirt belongs to me. I am not the shirt. So, what we were trying to establish in the last session was, when an object comes under the category of either Idam or Mama, it is not under the category of Aham. So anything that is Idam, this, or Mama, mine, or both, if it belongs to any of these three groupings, it cannot be me. It cannot be me, which is Aham. And this was where we were looking at the Panchakoshas as 5 layers of personality, where either the Idam and or the Mama is mistakenly taken to be Aham. Okay? And the most obvious one was the first kosha or the Annamaya kosha, where the body, which comes under the category of Mama, is taken to be Aham. Sometimes we are so closely attached to the body that we see the body as a part of ourselves. But a deep analysis will show that the body is something that I own, right? We say my body, right? So it's clearly seen that the I that says this is my body is different from the body. Okay, so that was at the level of the first kosha, the Annamaya kosha. So the exercise was that how through analysis we can see that I, the Aham, is different from the body, which is either Idam or Mama. That was with regard to the Annamaya kosha. Then we went on to the Pranamaya kosha, which is my physiological systems, which are internal to the gross body. You know, and sometimes we may identify it even more closely with us. For example, my breath, my life force, my breathing. Again, upon closer analysis, you can see that this comes under the category of a this, an idam, and it is not aham. Moving on, we come to the Manomaya kosha, where the mind, where one can clearly see again upon closer analysis that the mind, my mind, you know, it goes through different conditions. One day it's happy, one day it's sad. So I can see that the mind goes through different conditions. And the one who sees it, there's another, the one who sees it is I. And this I is different from the mind. So mind, again, Manomaya kosha comes under the category of this. And likewise for Vijnanamaya kosha, where again we look at my intelligence and my knowledge, which is different again from the I. Knowledge and intelligence are things that are owned by me and are not me. And finally, Anandamaya kosha, which talks, where we refer to it as ignorance, again, it is something that belongs to me. That is why I say my ignorance. Okay? So, to sum up, what we've seen is that the Panchakoshas and the three shariras, the three bodies, upon analysis, you will find that they are either owned by me or they are witnessed by me. Okay? In fact, I should add, it's not just Panchakosha in three bodies. Panchakosha, three bodies, and the three states of existence. It means the waking, dream, and deep sleep. So all the three categories of things are either owned by me or they are witnessed by me. This is what we have seen in the analysis. And what belongs to me is not me. What belongs to me is not me. What is witnessed by me is also not me. Okay? And that is why at the end of it, at the end of the Panchakosha in Tattva Bodha, the author will say, Atmana Bhavati. That means Atma is not the three bodies, Atma is not the Panchakosha, and Atma is not the three states of experience. Okay? Three states of experience means the waking, dream, and deep sleep state. Okay? So, what is Atma? So the next question naturally would be, what is Atma? And we are going to look at that today. Okay? So we'll start with page 254, the blue book, where the student is kind of exasperated because now he has said that after all the analysis, he has said now that Atma is not this, Atma is, everything is not Atma. So he actually adds the word there, Atma tarhi kaha. Then what is Atma? You know, the signs of exasperation are showing in the student's line of questioning. So in page 254, he would say, Atma tarhi kaha. Atma tarhi kaha. Then what is Atma? To which the teacher replies, Sat-Cit-Ananda Swarupaha. That means Atma is of the nature of Sat, Chit and Ananda. So the student actually goes on to say, you have introduced 3 words. It's like if I would ask you, what is a unicorn? Instead of telling me it's a horse with a horn, you go and tell me that unicorn is some you use some funny words which nobody understands instead of properly describing a unicorn. So this is what the guru has done here. And he asked, what is Atma? Instead of describing Atma, he said Atma is Sat-Cit-Ananda. All 3 words the student does not understand. So the student's next question actually is, what is Sat, what is Chit, and what is Ananda? So his first question is, Sat Kim? What is Sat? And the teacher replies, Kalatraye api tishtati iti Sat. Okay? I'll look at the 3 definitions collectively. Okay, so let me just run through the verses first. Okay, so he's asking what is Sat, and he says Sat is Kalatraye api tishtati iti Sat. Then he asks what is Chit, and that's in page 260 where he says Chit Kim. What is Chit? And the teacher says Jnana Swarupaha. So Chit is Jnana Swarupaha. And finally he asks in page 263, Ananda Kaha. What is Ananda? And the teacher replies, Sukha Swarupaha. Okay? And then he finishes off the shloka with Evam Satchidananda Swarupam Swatmanam Vijaniyat. Okay? So we shall look at it collectively. Yeah? Sat, Chit and Ananda. I shall not take it in the order of Sat, Chit, Ananda. I shall handle Chit first. Okay? So, when the student had asked what is Chit, the teacher had said Jnana Swarupaha. Actually, in the typical Vedanta text, the teacher gives a one-word answer like that, the student will probably have a question that is 5 or 6 verses long. They will not take it just like that, especially when the answer is so short and cryptic. Jnana Swarupaha, of the nature of, direct translation of Jnana Swarupaha means it is of the nature of, let's see what's the explanation given there. It's of the nature of pure consciousness. So it's of the Jnana Swarupa. Jnana here refers to consciousness. So here the student easily accepted it, but again, Tattva Bodha being a text that just touches on the concepts and go. So there is no in-depth analysis of what is Jnana Swarupa. The student just accepts the answer and he goes on to ask what is Ananda. There's no elaboration of what is consciousness in Tattva Bodha. But there are other Vedanta texts and Upanishads that elaborate a lot about what is Chit and what is Jnana. And based on those texts, I'm going to explain what is consciousness and what is Chit. Okay? So, Chit means consciousness, pure consciousness. Pure consciousness means consciousness not of something. Consciousness not of an object or consciousness of something. Pure, that's called, generally referred to as pure consciousness. Let me elaborate further. In Vedanta, Atma is of the nature of consciousness, and this is what enables the human body and all living things to be alive and sentient. Okay? In Vedanta, Atma is of the nature of consciousness. Okay? Atma, which is I, my Swarupa. Remember, I gave a holding definition of Atma. Atma is my essence. So here, Vedanta says that Atma, I, my essential nature is that of pure consciousness, and this consciousness enables the body to be sentient and alive. Next, I want to talk about 5 principles regarding consciousness, regarding Chit. First principle, okay, you have to take note. I shared some of this in Bhagavad Gita class, but I shall repeat it again. First point to note is, consciousness is not a part, property, or product of the body. I had just said that consciousness is that which enables the body to be sentient and alive. But here the first principle I'm saying is that consciousness is not a part, property, or product of the body. It seems to be almost has nothing to do with the body, but it is that which keeps the body alive. So your natural question to me then would be, what is the relationship then between consciousness and body? Since I'm saying that consciousness is not a part, product, or property of the body, correct? So if you can infer the answer, what is the relationship between consciousness and body? The relationship is one of Satyam and Mithya. The relationship is one of Satyam and Mithya. Consciousness being Satyam, the body being Mithya. Okay? All the examples and analysis we did when we studied Satyam and Mithya will apply every time I mention a Satyam-Mithya relationship. Okay? The simple example, again, to bring a memory back, the simple example would be pot and clay. Okay? So, principle number 1, consciousness is not a part, product, or property of the body. Okay? Second principle, consciousness, Chit, is an independent entity that pervades the body. Okay? I'm going further now. Again, I'm bringing in the body, but this gives greater clarity that it's a Satya-Mithya relationship. So first principle, consciousness is not a part, product, or property of the body. Second principle, consciousness is an independent entity that pervades the body and makes the body alive. Okay? Okay, this is linked to my the preamble I said. Okay? So if you choose to ignore the preamble, you can take principle number 1, not a part, product, property of the body. Principle number 2, an independent entity that pervades the body and makes the body alive. Again, remember, bearing in mind, relationship between consciousness and body is one of Satyam and Mithya. Okay? Principle number 3, consciousness is not limited or circumscribed by or confined to the boundaries of the body. Consciousness is not limited or circumscribed by or confined to the boundaries of the body. Okay? So it is all pervading. What I'm trying to say is that consciousness is not limited by space. Consciousness is not limited by space. What do I mean by limited by space? If I were to take this mouse, this computer mouse is in my hand. It is not in the next room. In other words, it's here means it is here. It is only here, it is not in another place. So it has a limit, it's limited by space in the sense that it can't be here and in the next room at the same time. So it is limited by space. Consciousness is not limited by space. And that is why we can safely conclude that consciousness is all pervading. Okay? It is all pervading, not limited by space whatsoever. Okay? That's the third principle. Fourth principle, consciousness will continue to survive even after the body perishes. It means even after this gross body perishes, consciousness will continue to survive. That's principle number 4. And principle number 5 related to that is that after the death of the body, consciousness is not recognized because of the absence of a medium to reflect it. Principle number 5, after death, consciousness is not recognized because of the absence of a medium to reflect it. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that while you are alive, you have mediums, instruments, which are essentially your subtle bodies, your jnanendriyas, instruments within you that enable the reflection of this consciousness. And hence, you are able to be a throbbing, sentient, living organism. When you are dead and the subtle body is gone, the dead gross body does not have an instrument, which is namely the subtle body, to reflect the consciousness, to manifest it in a way that you can see it as something living. That is why the dead body lies there without any form. And therefore it's classified as a non-living thing. Okay? Basically, there isn't the appropriate instrument to reflect it, to show that it is that consciousness is present. Okay, that's the fifth principle. So, if Atma is Sat Chit Ananda and Atma is Chit Swarupa, so now, by now we have known that my Swarupa is also consciousness and I therefore am nothing but pure consciousness, says the Shastra. That is for definition of Chit. So Chit is Jnana Swarupa, Jnana means consciousness and Atma is of the nature of consciousness. But there were two other words there. There was the word called Sat and the word called Ananda. So what did the Guru say? That was the definition of the word Sat. He said Sat was Kalatreye api tishtati iti. That means that which stays in all three periods of time is called Sat. That which stays in all the three periods of time is called Sat. Stays actually is I would go on to not just say stay, but remains unchanged. Stays and remains the same in all three periods of time. Three periods of time meaning past, present, and future. That means it is something that is, you're talking about something that is eternal. Eternal and never changing. That is called Sat. Okay, in Vedanta Shastra, when something is referred to as Sat, that's where you will get the word Satyam, truth, eternal truth. It's unchanging. It was like that in the past. It is now in the present, and it will be like that in the future. So Atma is Sat Chit. It's consciousness that was unchanging in the past. It is unchanging in the present, and will be unchanging in the future. So Atma is Sat Chit. Okay. 3. And what's the last one? Ananda. And what is the Guru's definition there? He said Sukha Swarupa. Sukha means happiness. Sukha Swarupa, that means it is of the nature of happiness. Ananda means it's of the nature of happiness. How does that come about? If you see principle number 3, it says that consciousness is not limited by space. Atma is all-pervading, present everywhere. It's boundless, all-pervading, and limitless. When something has got no limitations whatsoever, in Sanskrit it's called Ananta. That is why you say Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That means Brahman that is limitless, no limit whatsoever. Anything and everything is in consciousness. So when something is limitless, where everything and anything that you desire is already fulfilled inside, that limitlessness is nothing but happiness. Because there is no wanting, no lack. So Ananda becomes Ananda. That's why you get Sat, Chit, Ananda. Because when something is limitless, there is no lack. When there is no lack, there is no unhappiness. Correct? All our unhappiness comes about because of what? Some lack, right? Either physical lack, emotional lack, mental lack, psychological lack, some lack, right? So when there is no lack whatsoever, the limitless becomes happiness. There's no lack, it becomes happiness. So Ananta becomes Ananda. It is what we call as Purnatva, completeness, right? So what are they trying to say? So Sat Chit Ananda means that Atma is of the nature of Sat Chit Ananda means Atma is Sat, Atma is Chit, and Atma is of the nature of Ananda. So Atma is complete, Purnam, no lack. You remember in the very first class I said how that Brahmananda that you're seeking is already within you, Shastras say. So this is what it is saying. Your inner Swarupa, your inner essence, your Swarupa is already that Ananda, which is complete. Which is why in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in chapter 2, verse 55, remember? Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamano gatan atman yevatmana tushtaha stita prajnasta ruchate. The stita prajna is the one who is atman yevatmana tushtaha. He is enjoying by the Atma in the Atma. And tushtaha means satisfied. That means he's satisfied by himself because he has no lack. He's purnam, he's complete just with himself. Our happiness today is always dependent on something, right? It's dependent on people, objects, things, situations, good emotions, good thoughts, happy conditions, happy situations, things working out favorably. Many things which are outside us, sometimes even outside our control. So our happiness is always dependent on things. Bhagavad Gita talks about a happiness, the Sthita Prajna's happiness, the happiness of the man of realization is a happiness that is dependent just on himself. So think of the logic of it. If you can have a type of happiness that is entirely dependent only on yourself, you don't have to depend on anything else to be happy. And that's a proposition made by Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, and which is authenticated here by the definition of Atma as Sat-Cit-Ananda. Okay? Yeah, Karthik, raise your hand. Yeah, Karthik.
Namaste. The question I have is, Atman is supposed to be attributeless. Then isn't happiness an attribute?
No.
Isn't that an upadhi, so to speak?
Absolute happiness is not an attribute. Here, Sat-Cit-Ananda, when something is limitless, Anantam, there is no want. Today, the Ananda, the so-called happiness that we all enjoy, is a happiness that has got a finite start point and a finite end. Okay? Because of we have limited it in a way. What the Shastra is saying is that the nature of ourselves actually is already boundless happiness, which is what the Nityananda says, and that is not an attribute, that is your nature. It's like saying sugar and sweetness. Sweetness is not an attribute of sugar, it's the dharma of sugar itself. It's the nature of sugar is sweetness. That is what the Shastra is saying, that you are Ananda. You get it?
I do, but I have trouble relating to it. I do get it.
Is it because of some other learning? If it's because of some other learning, you have to handle it outside.
No, I'm just trying to think. Let's carry on. It'll come to me eventually. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, Krishna, Sada? Yeah, Sada, you raised your hand.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to unmute. No, I think that is because invariably we define happiness by way of dependency at the current moment. So any and every happiness we think about, it's about having a Rolex watch or a cross pen or Mercedes Benz or whatever it is, therefore they're all dependent happinesses. I suppose this happiness we are talking about is completely independent happiness and therefore has no relationship to the way we have defined happiness currently. And that where probably is the solution or the understanding that one needs to develop.
Yes. I don't know whether that helps to answer Karthik's question.
Yes, it does. I think I just need to reflect on it a little more. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so a few more points. Okay, we'll look further a bit more, and because with this, actually, the teacher says that with this definition of Satchidananda, he actually goes on to add that you should come to see the Atma as this. That means one should come to know one's nature as Satchidananda. That's why he said, Evam Satchidananda Swarupam Swatmanam Vijaniya. It means you should come to know your real nature as that of Satchidananda. That is what the teacher says here. And with that, actually, he ends the section on the microcosmic analysis. Okay, but we shall look at a bit more details about nature of Atma. Okay. Any questions before I move on? I take it you all are okay, but you're still cracking your head on it. We can wait and raise the questions later. Okay. Now, Let's dive deep a bit more into consciousness and Sat-Cit-Ananda, Sat-Chit and Ananda. Okay? Now, the knowledge that you have of the world, how do you get it? How you get it, if you analyze, it's gained as thoughts in your mind. Thoughts may not be a good word because it's quite restrictive. A better word would be cognitions. The entire world exists in your experience. Let's confine ourselves to waking state first for now. Huh? The entire waking state world that you all experience from the time you get up till the time you go to sleep, how does it exist in you? If you analyze, it only exists as cognitions in your mind. Think about it. Without cognitions, without these cognitions, no knowledge of anything is possible. No knowledge of anything is possible without these cognitions taking place within you. These cognitions enable you to know the world, transact with the world, relate to the world, communicate with the world. All of it is cognitions. What do I mean by that? Let's take a simple example of a sense perception. Again, go back to my mouse. When you see the mouse, what has actually happened is that there is an image of the mouse that has been formed as a cognition in my mind. And that's why I'm able to see and say, now I know the mouse. That is called a type of cognition that's linked to a sense perception. Okay? I may be sitting down here, no object, but I can easily recollect a thought, a nice experience, a nice memory of the past. I can recollect it at will. That is a cognition. Or when it comes to my job, I can be doing deep analytical thinking. That is also a cognition. And in dream state, I have an entire range of cognition. I imagine myself to be an emperor with people attending to me. Everything is a cognition. So you see, in life, what you call as life is nothing but one cognition after another. Cognition after cognition after cognition after cognition. You attribute so much of importance to the world around you. But if you analyze, it's actually nothing but a series of cognitions replacing one after the other. The things that you own are cognitions. Your family is a cognition that you see. Your relatives, your children, your job, things that you hold dear, your memories, both good and bad, are all nothing but cognitions. Finally, your own body, your own human physical body, what is it actually? Isn't it a cognition also? And all of these cognitions take place in the mind, right? That is why when your mind retires in deep sleep at night, you don't have a body. Correct? Your physical body is also a cognition. And consciousness, as chit, is present in every cognition. And yes, you saw the principles of consciousness. Consciousness is present everywhere. So what's the relationship between consciousness and cognitions? I've spoken about consciousness, and you know what is cognition. So what's the relationship between consciousness and cognition? Let me explain. Again, going back to my mouse. Now you see a mouse. Okay? What has happened is that consciousness has been modified to produce a cognition called mouse cognition. That cognition that is taking place is consciousness modified by the object. So the relationship between consciousness, Atma, and the cognition is a relationship of Satyam and Nitya. Relationship between consciousness and cognition is one of Satyam and Nitya. And every cognition is different, right? You have a cognition of a book, a car, cognitions of love, cognitions of hatred, all sorts of cognitions. But every cognition is actually nothing but chit, but it's qualified, limited in a certain way by the object. And an example would be how clay, I can have clay, but clay can be made into different shapes, right? I can have a clay pot, I can have a clay vase, I can make a clay elephant, right? In each of these cases, there's clay, but the clay is modified by an object into that final object, which we call by name. But again, note how the Satya-Mithya relationship continues to persist, notwithstanding the modification of consciousness caused by the object of the cognition. So, while these cognitions are taking place in our life, into this thing which we call life, consciousness is at the same time the witness of these cognitions. Consciousness, Atma, is the witness of the cognitions and thoughts that take place. An example, again, a good example would be that of water and wave. If I call the waves if I go to relate cognitions as wave, wavelet, tsunami, big wave, little wave, all of this will come under the parallel of this will be the cognition. Then what is consciousness? Consciousness is the ocean water. Okay, this is the example to show the relationship between cognitions and consciousness. Okay, so Atma is the witness to all the cognitions that take place in the mind. That is why it was called as Sakshi. It is the witness to all the cognitions that take place in our mind, and this is something that takes place all the time. And we call this our human life. Then the question arises, if that is the case, then where is the problem? Where is the problem statement and where is the error made? Because life is all about cognitions, consciousness being qualified by a certain object, and this object is witnessed by consciousness itself as Sakshi, and this is what we call life. Then where is the mistake? The mistake comes because I identify myself more with some cognitions and less with the other cognitions. And the most fundamental problem is that I identify myself with this cognition called body, with this cognition called mind, this cognition called intellect. These are, instead of being the witness of the body, mind, intellect, I take myself to be the body, mind, intellect. I think that I am the body, mind, intellect. And this is an error, a cognitive error. That is the fundamental error that is the cause of the entire samsara. Okay? Any questions?
So Ravi, does that mean is consciousness the sum total of all the myriad cognitions, or
Yes.
is it
Not
more
sum
than
total, not sum total, not numerical total. Like water and wave, where there are many waves and wavelets, but water is not the sum total of waves. So it's not a numerical sum. Huh? It's a Satya-Mithya relationship. Huh? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of.
Not numerical, not numerical.
Yeah, I'm constantly conscious of various objects. I recognize them, or I'm cognizing them all the time, continuously, both in waking sleep and in dream state. Then to me it seems that consciousness therefore is that yeah, it's not numerical, but it's however some way of a sum total of all my cognitions. The entire lot of cognitions together sum up to my consciousness. Is how
Wait, let me finish that.
I think it's probably more like a superset rather than a sum total. I think that's probably the word you want to look at.
Okay.
No, but even a superset presumes that there is nothing beyond that set. But is consciousness something even beyond? is what I am sort of.
Okay. The nature of the human mind is to entertain. You can only handle one cognition at a time. So when I have a single cognition, the next moment is replaced by a next cognition, then is replaced by a next cognition. Our life is a series of constant cognitions taking place in our mind. That's what we call a life. Okay? Every time I'm having a cognition in my mind. So does it mean the previous one gone away? Yes, it's gone away because it is mithya anyway. So that's why the question of subset, superset, or numerical doesn't mean anything because it only exists for the moment and it's gone. Okay? So it's like water, it's formed a wavelet, next minute it's gone. You don't try to find out where is it, It's a Satya Mithya relationship, don't forget that. These things have got no existence of their own.
Thanks.
I know this topic is heavy. Some of you will be trying to still find a footing. I apologize for that. But really, there are lots of Sanskrita texts and Vedantic texts that elaborate in depth on this. It's just that Tattva Bodha is just touching and going. And I felt it wouldn't be justice to you if I would also just touch and go without covering some depth. Huh? But we can, in subsequent Vedanta classes, when we do other texts, we can come back and look at it again. Huh? We'll see what we can do. Yeah, Saundarya.
Ravi, going back to your mouse example.
What example?
Mouse.
Mouse.
So that is an example of something that does not reflect consciousness, right? The jada, which does not reflect the inert, non-living things, which don't reflect consciousness, right?
No. We are discussing different things. The jada it's about living things and non-living things. Huh? That's a different. My mouse example doesn't apply to that. My mouse example is to explain the relationship between consciousness and how consciousness is qualified by an object and as though limited by an object. Okay. Jada is different. There you're talking about something external, something is sentient or a living thing or non-living thing. That's a different concept altogether. It is not related to the mouse example that I gave.
Okay, so whether living or non-living, any object not reflects consciousness, is a name and form of the consciousness.
Consciousness is everywhere. Why is it some things are living, some things are non-living, right? Non-living things do not, remember I mentioned earlier, they don't have the instrument to reflect the sentience. Whereas living things have got the instruments to reflect the sentience. So they appear as living, moving. So does it mean a rock, an inert rock has got no consciousness? No, consciousness is everywhere. Obviously it has. Okay? But rock is not able to manifest that consciousness as a living sentient being. It's not able to do it because it doesn't have the instruments. So that's why I say this is a different point that we are discussing there in relation to the mouse example. The mouse example was to reflect something else.
So in the mouse example, you're talking about how we cognize,
we cognize things.
As a mouse.
Yes. And how cognitions take place in our mind, in our perception, in our range of perception, our view, and how we see things, you see, and how that is related to consciousness itself, which is Atma, which is I. Okay?
Yep.
Now we come to a very important point, which we call in Vedanta, in what Pujya Swamiji Dayananda Saraswati often call as the fundamental error, the most fundamental error which leads to all the problems. You see, when I identify myself as a body, mind, and intellect, basically the inner instruments, when I take these to be myself, the I, which is actually nothing but Atma, the pure consciousness, under an error, due to the ignorance of its own nature, this ignorance leads to the creation of this individuality called Ahankara or ego. Okay? A cognition, and Ahankara itself is also a cognition, an individuality. This individuality is born when this identification with the body, mind, sense, intellect takes place. And when this Ahankara is born, this Ahankara is the one that subsequently undergoes all the sufferings and happiness in life. So your individuality today that you see, the limited individuality that I take myself to be, is actually there. Why? Because it is an individuality that is taken itself to be the body, mind, sense, intellect, achievements, and taking itself as a being that is born related to these people. This individuality is what we call as the Ahankara, not in the negative sense, but in the Ahankara as in the individuality, individual ego. This has been born because of a misidentification with the body, mind, sense, intellect, instruments. And this Ahankara, having been born, therefore undergoes through all these afflictions which we call as samsara. So, where does that means that is the fundamental error, then what is the solution? The solution, therefore, is what we call as the cognitive shift, where I bring to see myself not as an individual Ahankara identified with the body, mind, sense, intellect, but to see myself as witnessing consciousness, as pure awareness that witnesses all these things that take place. It's a cognitive shift that needs to take place in the individual, and it comes about as a result of inquiry into Vedanta texts. I'll talk a bit about how to do the analysis and all that later, but in a gist, this is the fundamental error, and the solution is actually to bring about a cognitive shift in oneself, to see myself not as the individuality that's identified with the body, mind, sense, intellect complex, but to see myself as pure awareness that is the witnesser, if I may use that word, the witnesser, the witness of all the cognitions that are taking place here and now. Let me unmute you. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Hi. Okay.
Hi.
So I was just wanted to ask, the chit in the blue book is defined as consciousness, and it's also described as one presence. May I just ask why they chose the translation consciousness? Because to me that just represents being aware. That's all, and it doesn't. I can't quite comprehend what they mean. I understand what they mean by one presence, but I don't understand why they chose the word consciousness, because I'm coming is giving me the idea of just being aware. Is that correct? Or
yes, consciousness. You're going to, if you feel comfortable with the word awareness, please use that.
Okay, so
Instead
that's
of
all
consciousness.
it is.
Yes.
So that's
because,
what chit means. Okay.
Sorry? You can call chit as awareness. It's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were going to say?
Personally, I like, in my own learning, I always use the word awareness, chit. There's another Sanskrit word for it called avagati, which is also awareness. I personally prefer the word awareness because it's more direct as compared to consciousness, which sounds a bit more esoteric.
Yeah, like individualistic a bit.
Right.
Okay, so that's all it means, just awareness, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Prasad? Let me unmute you.
Yeah. Okay. I think, okay, I can see where we are headed. If we continue with our sadhana, continue with our meditation and further study, we will reach a point where we might be able to have some degree of self-realization, and to the point where, we realize that we are not our physical body or subtle body, and so on. But when we talk about other people, we recognize them by their body-mind-intellect complex. Like when I say Ravi, we see you as our teacher, we recognize your physical body, your intellect, but we don't say Ravi as the Atma. When we talk about MS Subbalakshmi, we see her as a physical, we know what she looks like, we know her talent, we have heard her singing, etc., etc. But we don't think of MS Subbalakshmi as an Atma, as a divine Atma. So on and so forth for everybody else. So we can probably realize it for ourselves at some future stage, but it's still difficult for us to go beyond the mind-body complex for others.
Okay. When when Dr. Prasad attains, let me use this example for the fun of it. When Dr. Prasad attains self-realization, he will see oneness, not just of his body, mind, sense complex, but he will see the entire gamut of things, happenings, people, life. He will see it all as pure consciousness. And if he sees MS Subbulakshmi will also be seen as pure consciousness by the self-realized Dr. Prasad. You see? So it's like saying that when water is seen itself as water, say a wavelet were to see itself as water, it will see the tsunami also as water. It will see smaller waves as water. It will see the big ocean as water. Everything it will see as water. Because remember the Satya-Mithya relationship. It will be clear about the Satya-Mithya relationship. Make sense?
Okay, thank you.
Then, this, I'm just wondering as to how practical would it is, or it would be for the Ahankara to be constantly in a state of inquiry, at every cognition point. I mean, throughout my day, throughout my living, waking state, how practical is it for me to be inquiring and training myself to have this inquiry, and that's what I'm just wondering. I mean, is this so theoretical that it is not possible to practice, or to achieve a certain, okay, let's not, I mean, we can always quote the usual, Ramana Maharshi, etc. But then as ordinary human beings, how does one train, and is it practical to be inquiring all the time, when you have to live a life?
Can you hold that question until I come to the practical part of it? I'm just going to touch it. I'm going to touch on it next, actually. So
Sure.
You see if I've answered your question, or at least gone some way towards answering your question after I handle the next few points. So going forward now, if this is the fundamental problem, how are we going to bring about this cognitive shift in us? And this is what Shastras will talk about as a intense study of Vedanta literature. Okay? And it involves the study of texts that cover a lot of deep analysis. And in the study of these deep analysis, it will help you to anchor the truth of this statement. The analysis will also show you the logic of it, what I've tried to do here in 30 minutes or what. And Vedanta Shastras, they will do a very deep analysis to show you much more clarity the truth of these statements. And if these statements are taken on board by you and assimilated, it will sit well with you. This process of listening to the Vedanta text is what we call in Vedanta as Shravanam. Shravanam is a process of listening to the text by the teacher. But having listened alone is not enough. There is a need for deep inquiry into the meaning of the text. So what I've said today, it's not just important to just accept it, or because it's coming from a Vedanta text, or because it's coming from me, or whatever. It's not enough. You need to do a deep inquiry into the meaning of it. Inquiry and reflection. And such deep inquiry and reflection will create doubts within you. It will create lots and lots of doubts. And these doubts have to be cleared by a guru, a teacher. So that will show you why Vedanta learning in those days was always one-on-one. Here I'm talking to 44 people, 43 people at one time. If 43 of you have got doubts, and I've got 43 different doubts, just think of the scale of the problem, and how we're going to handle it. So the point I'm trying to make is that in Vedanta study, that is why it used to be one-on-one, or at least very small groups, with a teacher, because the deep inquiry and reflection will create lots and lots of doubts in you. And these doubts, you have to raise it to the teacher, the qualified teacher. And the qualified teacher will then clear the doubts. And if the doubts are cleared, then the knowledge will sit well and truly with you. And this is called, and so the process of clearing the doubts is what we call as Manana. And then the knowledge that is established in you is called Nidhidhyasana. So there's Shravanam, there's this 3-step process of Shravanam where you listen to the text, Mananam where you reflect, do inquiry, and the doubts come and you clarify the doubts with the Guru. And then finally, when the knowledge gets established in you, it's called Nidhidhyasana. So Shravanam, Mananam, and Nidhidhyasana. Okay? And so that is the part about the knowledge. And while that is going on, again to address Sada's question also, that is not enough, because if you were to just do that, this becomes an academic exercise. This becomes a theoretical Vedanta lesson. It's very important that you live a life that is aligned with this truth. If Shastras, if you have Shraddha, faith in the Shastras that Atman is one, and by now you can see Sat-Cit-Ananda because of its limitlessness and eternalness. Sat-Cit-Ananda is no different from Brahman. God, Brahman, divine mind, all one and the same. So if God is all there is, God, consciousness, Shastra, awareness, Atma is all one and the same, then you have to live a life aligned with that, which means you have to live a life in tune with the belief that I am divine. And if I am divine, so is everyone else. The people around me are divine. And when you are divine, you have to behave like you are a divine person and manifest the divine attributes. So while you try to seek to uncover, to know your divinity via the study of Vedanta, you also have to live a life based on the Shraddha, on the belief of what the Shastras are saying. And this is where it brings us to the point about how we live our life, how we treat people. The earlier points I mentioned about having unconditional love for all of this has to be aligned, because if this misalignment is, if you don't live a life aligned with this, the study of Vedanta Shastra is not going to sit well with you, because this is not an intellectual academic study. It's something that is so deep-rooted in you, because it is talking about deconditioning a mind and intellect that has been conditioned for hundreds, maybe thousands of births. You're deconditioning that. And to do that, it has to be something that is very intense and very seriously undertaken. It is not something that you can do as a project or as one of your many hobbies. And one more thing, don't forget. Remember, I said that this is part 3 of the 3-part solution, if you remember. You remember the first 2 parts? That is equally important, because if one does not have a pure mind or a steady mind, yeah, thank you. Okay, so this is the third of the 3-part solution. The first part being that of a pure mind, and the second part being that of a steady mind. These are equally important for the knowledge to take deep root within you. So this, while we develop a pure and a steady mind, and while we study the Vedanta text, we have to persistently acknowledge our divinity, because we believe in what we are studying in. It cannot be a case where I'm going to say, I will only believe that divinity is everything when I attain self-realization. No, you can't do that. While you're studying Shastra has already said that divinity is in everything and everyone. So you have to live a life aligned with that, even as you are studying and doing inquiry on Vedanta texts. Because you're not doing that, you're not being faithful, if I may use that word. You're not being faithful to the Shastras because you don't believe in it first. Okay? So this persistent acknowledgement of the divinity in others and myself is very important, because that way I'll be able to live a life that is wholly integrated with what I'm trying to achieve and what I'm studying. And while in parallel, I develop the pure and the steady mind to better assimilate and acknowledge the knowledge that I'm gaining. Okay? Yeah. Sandra, I had a question. Yeah.
Sorry, not a question, just a comment. I just find it very ironical that right from our birth, people put labels on us. There's so much of effort going into building the kids' Ahankara, sense of mind, my, and like what you said, so many birds, our Ahankara is fuel. And to demystify or understand the truth, it requires a lot of effort, and it's only a one-to-one teaching. So it's just a bit unfair that very it's only a specific group or in a specific audience we get to undo whatever has been done so far. And to Sada's question on whether we'll have to constantly inquire once we get the self-realization, I think it's something similar to us understanding how things work. Now, until something like, for example, we wonder how the light works or how the computer works, it's a matter of wonder, we keep inquiring. But once we sort of know how it works, we know that it's electricity, we know things, right? I think it's the shift happens, you just know it, and you don't have to keep inquiring further once you reach that state. So I don't think one needs to worry about how we will sustain it once the cognitive shift happens.
Okay. Your point about deconditioning. Yes, that's a sad truth. It's a sad truth. It's a conditioning that's taking place for hundreds of births, yeah. But I don't quite agree on that part where you said it's only a select group that gets to hear it. If you remember in the very first class or second class in Hindu Center, somebody asked this question, is this the only way to salvation or to self-realization? And I made it clear then, if God's grace is there with intense bhakti, with intense devotion, this knowledge can descend upon one through God's grace. So the worship, that's why I keep going back to emphasizing that part again and again, because even if the knowledge, while you develop a pure and steady mind and you live with the vision of divinity, with acknowledgement of divinity in you and in everyone else, God's grace is going to descend upon you. And even if the Shravanam, Mananam, Nidhidhyasana doesn't work or has difficulty working because of obstacles, the God's grace is going to be a huge plus in your favor to drive you towards your goal, notwithstanding the obstacles that you may face in Shravanam, Mananam and Nidhidhyasana. So God's grace is of utmost importance. It's almost like a wildcard, if I may use that word. Huh? What do you call that? In Universal Studios, you have that free pass. You can jump the queue, I don't know what they call that. I can't remember the name. Anyway,
Fast track.
Huh?
Fast track.
Fast track, correct. That's right. So God's grace is like that, So you may feel that, I've got a long way to go. I've got a long journey to go. I've studied Vedanta for 30 years. Nothing seems to be going in. My life is still the same. You may feel that way, but that's very wrong, because with God's grace and with intensity to pursue God and to pray to God intensely, there will be results, you see. All you need is love for God and worship of God with a sincere heart, and you will see the results happening. Okay? So I don't agree to the part where you say that it's a select group. Yeah? It may seem academic, you need to know Sanskrit, you need to have a logical mind, I agree. But then again, there is a fast track. Just remember that. Yeah, Tanuja?
Hi.
Yeah.
Can
You remember the
okay.
question?
Yes, I do. Okay, so I was wondering, so we know that this is a journey, we're learning and then we embody, and then finally it reaches a state. I was wondering if you're at that stage where you learn, understand, and believe all of these things that are being taught and said from the Shastras, but you have not yet acted on it. Does not acting on it become adharmic? So
Not
you
adharmic.
understand.
Yeah.
So you understand, you believe, but you haven't yet started acting on it. So then, for example, just an example, let's say you believe and you see the oneness of all creation, but you still eat meat. Of course, eating meat is already adharmic, but knowing that that you see all animals as one, as part of yourself, and you as part of them, does it become even more adharmic? Or okay, no, maybe eating animals is the wrong example. Maybe getting angry at someone or something like that.
Yeah. No, it's that's why it goes back to my point again about alignment. When you're not aligned, especially if you consciously choose not to, while you're trying, you make mistakes, that's understandable, I guess. But when you deliberately don't want to live a life, then what you have learned is academic and remains intellectual as a piece of knowledge in your head. That's all.
You haven't accepted it completely yet. Is that you haven't embodied it yet?
Acceptance is not the word. You're not even trying to put it into practice. If it is so important to you and you see the goal as so important and valuable to you, what is holding you back from manifesting it in your life, from implementing it in your life? It should be a natural thing to do. But
What
if you're
about,
not doing it,
yeah, what about the Ahankara, like you grew up in a certain setting and stuff, and you're taught certain things, and that is completely opposite to what we learn about Atma, and that's who we are. So unlearning those tendencies can sometimes get in the way of embodying this oneness. Is that just part of the journey, or are we then leading like an adharmic life?
no, that is part of the journey. It's your intent that's most important. Are you aspiring towards the goal? That's the thing.
Okay.
If you're aspiring, of course there'll be obstacles. Nobody is born. Nobody was created perfect. We all have our obstacles in this journey. Some created by home, some created from setting, some even created by ourselves. But the whole idea is that to live a line in alignment with life that's aligned with what I'm learning, I should work on whatever obstacles that come my way, apply the knowledge that I have. No point having this knowledge when it's not applied in one's life, but chucked away only for Friday evenings, so it doesn't work that way, Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
So it's just an extension of the last week's sadhana, because now we've got Sat-Cit-Ananda, we've spoken a bit more. Look at it and see how you can live a life that's aligned with that. And the one in green below is my email. Some of you may not feel so comfortable raising some of the questions here in a big group. But it's really a burning question, feel free to email me and I'll attend to it. I'm actually done for today because with this we finished the micro cosmic analysis, and the author actually goes on to the analysis of the microcosm, where he'll talk about Brahman, God, and how the universe was created.
No, Ravi, I was just going to suggest that since there's some time, maybe you can share your personal experience and answer for this question. How did you feel when you're able to do it?
This one, that's giving the answer away already, right?
No, it's okay. Or your experience, you can share.
Let me share when after I heard yours.
Seriously? People want clues. People want hints.
I will share when you have shared yours. Okay, since you talk so much about sharing, okay. The key in all of this, ironically, I'd say, is how committed you are to God. Because if this goal is so important to you, the goal of seeking God will also be important to you. Because God and the goal are no different. So there is no excuse for a serious seeker of Vedanta to pursue God single-mindedly, to want to know God single-mindedly, to love God intensely, and to always think of God. That is the experience you want to share. This is what I can share with you. It's no different. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. Does it?
No, Ravi, we totally get where you're coming from. But I think...
No, for the benefit of others, it's okay. Answer the question. For the benefit, what is Atma?
Brahman.
Exactly, right? And what is the relationship between God and Brahman?
God is Brahman.
One and the same, right? Correct? So if I'm seeking Atma, how can I say I'm seeking something there but God is somewhere packed away, chucked away in some corner? It doesn't make sense. Correct? So that's why I was saying, in this journey, worship, intensity of worship, intensity of prayer cannot be underestimated. It's probably the very important element on whether you'll be successful in this journey or not. Three participants. Who else? Karthik, yeah.
Yes. My question is, let's say you get to the point where you understand that you are the consciousness, yet you still have this physical body and you still live in this reality. You still need to do whatever you need to do to kind of, you can't say that since now I have the knowledge, I'm going to resign from this life and, go away somewhere else or whatever. We still have to continue to do what we need to do. How do you reconcile the two?
Why is there a need to reconcile? Continue living in society if you want to.
Because
continue to resign a job if you want to.
When you are in this society, right, there will be someone who would come and aggravate you. Let's assume you see them also as conscious, an extension of the same consciousness. You don't want to hurt them or whatever, but if in that given role, all that you have to do is to do something to be a functional individual, whether professional or otherwise, you will have to take a hard step or a harsh step, so to speak. And wouldn't that be in contradiction to what you would want to do as someone who sees divinity in everyone?
The mother punishes the child. Does the mother punish the child because she hates the child? Or does the mother's love for the child diminish in any way when she punishes a child? She's doing a job as a mother.
That is a case where you're looking at two people who are related in that sense, in that example. But if it was someone, for example, who deliberately hurts the other person in a public setting or whatever, then what happens? In that example, the two are related. The mother is the giver of love, and that I understand. Right? But if it was a third person, then what happens?
No, but it's about doing the right thing, right? This could to see divinity is in your drishti, in your vision, correct? But that doesn't mean you act in a way that's different from society. It doesn't make you a freak, right? You exactly. Do what is mandated of you as society, from society. What society needs you to do, you have to do, right? That's your dharma of your deha, your role. That's a duty associated with your role. You do what needs to be done, but it's your reaction internally and how you perceive that person. Your reactions, that's going to be different. That's the one that's divinized now as a result of this knowledge. And we don't have to be a self-realized man to do that. Even now you can do that. I handle all sorts of people can irritate me and irk me and do things which frustrate me and make me very angry. But if I choose to see divinity in them, I can still do what is necessary of my job and of my role, but without the slightest trace of hatred for them. It can be done. I don't need to be a self-realized person to do that.
While we're on the topic, since you mentioned something about divine grace, what form does divine grace take, and how do you recognize if you benefited from divine grace? Is it like an epiphany you're talking about?
No, when you pray, you'll get what is required, and especially if you're praying for spiritual goals, you'll get what you want. That is divine grace.
Okay, so seeing your prayers being answered.
Yes.
Okay.
Divine grace is even stronger when what you're asking is a spiritual goal. It's far more stronger than to be a goal, and especially where the goal is for the greatest good of more people, it's more likely to fructify. Okay. Raghav?
Yeah. Namaste, Ravi.
Namaste.
When I was doing the sadhana, I am doing it for a long time, sadhanas, but during the time when I do sadhanas, it's very clear that I am awareness, and all the actions, whatever actions that is happening, karmic actions that is happening at the level of mind, at the level of body, it's very, very clear that I am a clear sakshi. But after my sadhana is over, there is a strong misconception that I am a conscious being trying to do actions of my own will. So is there such a thing of my own will? or it is an error that should be removed, and I should attain siddhi in this sadhana, where I see myself as the awareness throughout and throughout, and all the karmic activities.
I don't understand the second part about why you, the part about.
Because after the
conscious,
sadhana part,
after that, when you said, when you came out of it,
yes, when I
come
out of it, it really feels that I'm consciously doing things. There is an ability, there seems to be consciousness plus ability to do things consciously.
Okay.
But in the sadhana, this ability to do things consciously is removed, and consciousness or awareness alone remains.
It's something very personal. It is something very personal. I suggest you take it offline with me. Huh?
Sure,
okay?
Sure.
You call me subsequently. We will discuss it because it's something very personal to you in your sadhana. And I also like to. I also need to know what sort of sadhanas you're doing.
Okay, Ravi.
Yeah, Chitra.
Yeah, I just want to share something that someone else shared with me during course of conversation about being a witness. And we were talking about all these evolved souls, such as, excuse me, Ramana Maharishi, for instance, who suffered a lot before he expired, the bodily suffering. And apparently when devotees went to him, he was still clear-minded, and he could talk to people, etc. So when I asked this person how this was possible, she mentioned about it is possible to be a witness to what your body is going through and constantly telling yourself, that is the body, that is not me, let me detach myself from that body. Would that be one way of working towards being a witness?
It's the outcome of, actually it's the success that has been achieved. It is not the means, actually it's the end. You can't force yourself to, when your body is undergoing excruciating pain, you can't force yourself to say, be a witness, or even don't go physically, even mentally when you're having emotional issues, you can't force these things onto yourself. It can only come about when the mind, when the logical mind has been trained over time through persistent practice to see these things as not me, but different from me. How to do the training? That is where the vichara comes in, the study comes in, the persistent, regular study, and the lifestyle. So what you are seeing is actually the success story, where somebody was through sadhana and through study, they were so successful that even when the body got afflicted with diabetes and in pain, the person was able to distance himself from it. It's a success story.
I have another sort of comment or observation is that when put into situations which are inherently difficult, I mean, you made it easy by comparing it with the mother sort of disciplining the child, but we are talking about real life situations where you are in a position of responsibility and there are expectations of an organization which are counter to your what you think is dharma, and yet as part of that system you are unable to sort of say, okay, I'll step away or I'm leaving. You can't because of other compulsions. So then when repeatedly that kind of episodes happen, isn't that the danger of becoming a mithyachara as a, because that is now being practiced, you become basically a hypocrite. The danger of becoming a hypocrite is real. That's what I wanted to. I mean, you may initially justify it, saying, oh, I'm playing this role and I've been asked to fire people, it's a COVID time, but then you know that maybe the company is intentionally firing more than what it needs to fire, because they're taking advantage of the situation, and yet you're part of that thing. Then you're practicing mithyachara, and then that becomes part of you. However much I want to be a practitioner of Vedanta and a follower, that's the danger I see, and it'll be a tremendous struggle in the current world we live in.
Yeah, but really, but again, is it really an issue that you deal with. I mean, it's a common issue with anyone, any place where you find it, you're not happy with what you're doing. You can't sleep in peace because you're troubled by the moral dilemmas associated with the job. Then what do you normally do? You leave the job, right? I mean, that's quite the obvious choice, right? Especially when you can't sleep in peace, because here you're saying you're becoming a hypocrite. You feel that you don't feel good about becoming a hypocrite. So obviously the solution is to leave, right? I can't see any other way, you know.
That's the extreme decision. No? I mean, yes. I mean that is one solution, but I'm just wondering. I have no answer to that, because many of us are put into situations. You can say, yes, I have the free will, I have the final choice, but I've got to balance so many things in my life, you know, between, let's say, bringing up or putting children through college, you know, paying off a housing loan, whatever it is, you know, whatever those compulsions, and I can't just walk away.
Sure. But I think the Karthik's angle actually was not so much about a moral dilemma in physical situations where dharma adharma is the issue in question. And my reply also was that it's what are your internal responses in this situation? That's what the Vedanta subject matter is more important. That's where I'm coming from largely in answering most of these questions. How you react to these issues internally. It's not
I agree.
externally
Because
how you manage
you were
it.
talking about training the mind, right? I mean, you were talking about, because we have been trained all along to develop one's ahankara, or for whatever reason, trained or by self-own vasanas and nature, etc. And now we have to retrain, and it is in the retraining that all these stumbles are happening. You know? So
I don't agree, you know. The issue, you see, the example, wait, let me finish. The example you have cited is no different for any, even a non-Vedanta student has this issue. Why is it unique to a Vedanta student or somebody who's studying Vedanta?
In the case of a Vedanta student, it is even more, the danger of being a mithyachara and the guilt of being a hypocrite is even worse, you know. At least someone who is not a student of Vedanta can, he may feel a little bit like many of our mitras are there, and you know, they feel a bit guilty, but then they then laugh it off, saying, yeah, picking a purse that was lying on the floor, anyway it was untended, so it was okay, it was mine, and he'll walk away and he can feel comfortable. Whereas a student of Vedanta, if he picks it up, he's going to feel forever guilty.
I don't agree on that. You seem to suggest that dharma, the higher standards of dharma for students of Vedanta vis-a-vis others. I don't agree on that. Dharma is for everyone, regardless of whether you're a student of Vedanta or not. So I don't see your issue as peculiar or unique to
I'm saying
students of Vedanta.
What level of discomfort one will live with almost unavoidable adharma. You know, you cannot be all the time purely dharmic. I mean, that is almost sort of,
no, that I don't agree.
Becoming
I don't agree.
divine. You know, that's almost.
No, I can't agree on that. You're wrong to say that. You can't say that you can make compromises in dharma. How can you say that? You can't. You know, you tried. You cannot say that at the onset. I'm already going to make compromise.
You're trying, and yet you are failing because of whatever reasons, due to one's own weaknesses, due to situations where someone else is stronger than you in expecting you to do it, or you're compromising because there are things you're balancing your life with, you know, and thus you knowingly accept an adharmic position, you know. So I agree with you. I'm not saying that it is the correct thing to do, but then that is the situation you're placed in, especially in.
Okay, can I give you a solution then? Okay, can I give you a solution then?
Yeah.
You go to the altar and pray very hard to God. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing? You got to ask for God's help, seriously, because you know, we are not at liberty here to discuss the details of it, but really if it is such a dharma sankata where you want to live dharma so badly and there are so many obstacles that are preventing you from living a life of dharma, honestly, This is not something where people can help you. You probably need God's help. So all the more important that you pray to God and ask for God's grace and help to live your life such that I don't compromise my dharma. It is so important that you do it. I'm serious. You should do it. That's the first thing you should do after this session is over.
Sure.
Again, you're laughing. I don't understand. I don't understand why is it when I mention God, you're all laughing.
No, no. I was laughing because you started smiling at the end of the sentence. That's why.
I was smiling because there were other people on the screen who were smiling, namely Susain, Soundarya, Sumita, Chitra Haraprasad, and a few of them.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well taken advice.
Somebody else, Chitra, you raised your
Yeah,
hand.
yeah. In fact, you sort of echoed my own thoughts when you said, go and sit in the altar. I think it does help, when you're in a dilemma and you're not clear mentally what you should be doing, especially where maybe professional decisions or even emotional decisions have to be made. And I think it does help. The grace and guidance, sort of, a beam of light comes somewhere through some people, through advice or something like that. So I agree with you, Ravi, there.
Would we be covering this in the next few sessions? How do we practice seeing divinity in the others?
Okay.
Is that something that you'd be covering?
You practice seeing divinity in the others. Yes, because I don't intend to go on to the next session on macro. I want to go to, I'm thinking of taking a text next week, another text on how we can put some of these things that we have learned into practice. And that includes the point that you just raised. Yes,
Sure.
Yes, I will in the coming sessions.
Thank you.
Because no point we're talking about it and then go on to the next macrocosmic analysis where again it's all theoretical. We should anchor what we have learned here and look at how we can have strategies to put all this into practice. Only then it will be effective. The learning is effective. Otherwise, this becomes another theoretical class. Okay? So yes, the answer is yes.
Ravi, there was a discussion about Dharma Sankata, where a lot of obstacles put a person under a dilemma. Then I was reflecting, contemplating on Swadharma proposed by Sri Krishna. So in situations where it's at most needed, that certain activities that needs to be done, then one can fall back to Swadharma and consciously do whatever is needed, still not feel guilty about it.
Correct. So, but Sada's problem was that he was saying that despite doing the Swadharma, there seems to be some obstacles and adharma, and he is forced into a situation where, while doing Swadharma, he's forced into a situation where he may not have much choice but go and do something adharmic or dharma sankata. Again, we do not know the peculiarities of it.
Okay, Ravi. Okay.
To the closing prayers. Om Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahishaha Go Brahmanebhya Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Kale Varshatu Parjanyaha Prithvi Sasya Shalini Desho Yamsho Barahitaha Brahmana Santu Nirbhayaha Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhave Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you. See you all next week.
Thank you, Ravi.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ravi. Thank you very much.